Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Today's episode is the weekly review as ever on Friday, this week being the 30th of June 2017. So just going to go over the few bits of news from this week and then give you my top 10 list of safeties currently playing in the NFL. So, bit of breaking news today. Dorial Green-Beckham has been released by the Eagles. Now, this is a very talented player, drafted 2015, I think it was, by the Titans in the second round. It's a bit of a damning indictment at this point that, you know, two teams have part ways with him. He's not been particularly productive. He's apparently struggled to learn playbooks. Have to question whether it's just a mental thing or an attitude thing with him at this stage. The Eagles, revamped that position group this off-season. I've been very complimentary of them in the way in which they've done so. So it makes some degree of sense. Yeah, I've got no doubt he'll get another shot. Or maybe not no doubt, but I would suspect someone, especially one of the teams like the Jets, who could take a flyer on him because, why not at this point? And you never know, maybe you can get something out of that immense physical talent that he's got. It's a rare size-speed combination that he offers. So I think he needs to go to a team that has done a good job developing wide receivers, a team that has some guys already there, so he can maybe play as a third or fourth option, try and earn some playing time. Because I think if you just throw him in at the deep end, I think it's going to continue. He's going to continue to struggle, especially if it's on a side like the Jets. Whereas, I suppose he'll get opportunities to see the field. I think you want to try and bring him along at this point to becoming at least a competent wide receiver. As I say, rare talent set. I thoroughly expect someone to give him a chance. Philly, I don't blame them for doing this. They really didn't have... There was no need for them to have a guy that wasn't going to contribute. They look pretty stacked at that position for next season. Other news this week, Zach Orr, the Ravens linebacker who retired earlier this off-season after receiving a diagnosis, I think it was a neck injury. He apparently is reconsidering that decision and may come back into the league. Apparently the Ravens are hesitant to take him back. I can't blame them. The PR, of course, would be disastrous. Now, I do believe, of course, it is the player's choice. And if, heaven forbid, something unfortunate were to happen, he's made that decision. But I can understand from a PR perspective why a team would be cautious. I think it's going to be pretty difficult for him to get a role on the field. Maybe, especially at his age, if he was a more experienced player, maybe a team would bring him in for the sort of presence in the locker room. Obviously feel bad for the guy. It's a terrible situation to be in, especially if he has received a clearance essentially to continue his career and no one takes a shot. I don't know if any team would be necessarily willing to. It's not like he's got a track record as a young upcoming star like Chris Borland when he retired a couple of years ago. Not that he had any specific health conditions, but it's someone who'd proven themselves to be a very solid option. I hope the best for him. If he's physically able to play, I hope a team does give him an opportunity. I would be surprised if it's Baltimore, to be honest. I think it would probably end up being somebody else. So best of luck to Zachary Orr. Hopefully he can find a role in the league and stay healthy. The other big bit of news, Gabe Jackson, the right guard for the Oakland Raiders, has re-signed. I believe it's in the region of 5 years, 55 mil or so, making him one of the highest paid guards in the league. That's a lot of money, but they have just invested in Derek Carr, of course. This solidifies the interior of that line for the long term. The tackle position, I think, is a little more iffy. Donald Penn's been exceptional for them, especially last season. But he's getting a bit older. But with Semele and Gabe Jackson now re-signed, for the next few years at least, they're guaranteed to get high productivity. You'd have to expect from the middle of that group. You've paid the quarterback, you got to pay to keep him upright. I think a lot of teams have had some prolonged success offensively, like the Saints, the Packers. Whilst the Saints have maybe diverted from that a little bit with letting TJ Lang and Josh Sitton go, it's following that similar blueprint. It's a smart move. He's an ascending player. You can't let players like that get away, especially when you are developing a powerful young offense. Let them grow together. I think the interior is finally starting to get some recognition in today's league. I think it's just as easy to generate pressure up the middle as it has been from the edges traditionally. The quality of interior pass rush is exceptionally high in this league. So, yeah, good signing by the Raiders. As I say, I'm going to be concerned for how that defence may look in a couple of years if they keep paying these offensive guys. There's not necessarily going to be a lot of room there. Certainly a bit of a top-heavy team with regards to offence as opposed to defence. But if the offence is a strength, keep it that way. At least they've got Khalil Mack and they've got some young defenders. They might be able to make the most of this time whilst you've got these players that are young and developing and on rookie contracts, potentially make a run before you enter the sort of period of time in team building where you start entering having salary cap issues. So the Raiders, I feel they need to make the most of this opportunity. Maybe try and get to a Super Bowl in the next 1 to 3 seasons. I don't think they're too far off now. They're certainly capable of contending next year with a bit of luck, because of course luck is an essential part of it. Most teams cannot overcome too many injuries. I don't think the Raiders would be able to. They're a sort of star-driven team, so it'll be interesting to see how this line performs. A lot of pressure going to be on this offense now, I suspect, heading into next season, especially with Marshawn Lynch, Derek Carr now the highest paid player in the league, Gabe Jackson getting a big contract, now one of the highest paid guards, and expectations will be very high for the first time in Oakland for who knows how long, since I guess the year after they lost the Super Bowl. So certainly going to be fun to follow the Raiders. It usually is, this time for the right reasons. So that's all the news I've got for this week. If there's anything I've missed out you want to hear me discuss, just let us know, whether it's the comment section over Twitter or over Facebook. I'll do my best to get to it. So we're moving on to a top 10 list. Safeties currently in today's NFL. So we'll get started with player number 10, the former corner. I think a lot of people forget this. In Devin McCourty of the Patriots. Never really worked out from a corner, but he has developed into an exceptional free safety. This is a very multiple scheme, but I consider him the leader of this secondary. Him and Donta Hightower, I think, are the guys everyone listens to in that locker room. That's the impression I get. He's a very good pass coverage guy. He's become a much better tackler over the years. Still not one of the most dynamic tackling safeties, but he's no longer a liability like he was early in his career. Does a good job getting that group organised. It's a complicated scheme that the Patriots run. They do need a couple of very intelligent players to make sure everyone is lined up correctly, and he's the guy responsible for the secondary, and they've been an exceptional secondary over the last few seasons. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. I don't think he's the most physically talented player at the position, but in terms of intangibles, he makes up for it and is a very reliable, if not the most splashy, safety in the league. Next up at number 9, we've got another former corner, Malcolm Jenkins. Now, the Saints have had issues with their secondary for what feels like forever. And Jenkins was a bit of a bust for them. Then he's gone to Philly and become had a late career resurgence, or maybe not necessarily late career, but he's in his 30s now. He's become a really, really good player at the position. He's a bit of a thumper, which I wouldn't expect necessarily from a converted corner, but he's become, in the opposite situation to McCourty, what's a pretty poor secondary, probably one of the worst in the league. This is the one guy I think they can rely on heading into next season. Does a great job in the run game in particular. I do worry a little bit about his range, but his positioning is very good. His run fits are usually spot on, and he's become a really good tackler. Also a bit of a ball hawk for a guy who sort of plays in the way that he does. I think he's going to be essential to the Eagles' defence this season if they're to have success. Between him and the defensive line, it'll be interesting to see how productive they can end up being. So he comes in at number 9. Moving on to number 8, we've got one of, I feel, the most underrated players in the league, Rashad Jones of the Dolphins. Now, missed the vast majority of last season with an injury, but the 2 seasons he put in beforehand, he'd be higher up the list if it wasn't for the injury, because they were stellar. He absolutely stuffs the stat sheet. I think he's one of the smartest safeties in the league. He's been used as a multiple safety in that scheme. They've had him blitzing, they've had him playing deep coverage, they've had him basically playing as an additional linebacker. He really has just been a do-it-all, jack-of-all-trades type player. And yeah, the numbers he's put up are ridiculous. I think one of the best blitzing safeties in football, without a doubt. Very good tackler, makes great reads, and I think he's just a menace and a major threat to take the ball away on any given play. If he can come back healthy, he'll be higher up on this list. I think he's an absolutely superb player. More people need to check him out. Definitely, if you want to see why I rate him so highly, just watch the 2015 season and just all over the field, making huge amounts of tackles, big splash plays. Fantastic player. Huge fan of his. Coming in at number 7, we've got somewhat similar situation. Player coming off an injury, otherwise he may have been he came off an injury last year, didn't have as good a season. Tyrann Mathieu of the Cardinals. Of course, a couple of seasons ago, he was a legitimate defensive MVP candidate. Last season, came back down to earth a bit, coming off a major injury. It'll be interesting to see if he can get back to the form that he demonstrated the previous year. Obviously a smaller player, but he's a very good tackler, all things considered. Of course, might struggle with some of the bigger tight ends. He's going to have a bit of a tough time tackling a Gronk or a Kelsey in the open field. But, never fault his effort. Part of the reason I really rate him as well is the ability to play him in the nickel. Again, he's a multiple type player, such as the Cardinals scheme. You can blitz with him. He can play the free safety role. He's got great quickness. More quickness, I think, than straight line speed. But he's very agile, which comes with one of the advantages of being that size. He's very fluid in his movement, which is what allows him to play the nickel so well. Again, exceptional ball hook. Great ball skills. Great hands. And once he's got the ball, he's very dynamic with it in his hands. Superb player. I just hope we can recapture some of the magic from a couple of years ago, because he was a ton of fun to watch that year. Next up on the list, coming in at number 6, we've got a veteran at the position who finally left San Diego, went to Baltimore in Eric Weddle, and had one of the best seasons of his very good career. Again, another player I feel's always been somewhat under the radar. Most people are aware of who he is, but maybe not aware of quite how consistently good he has been. Did a great job last season. I think he's got a really good all-round skill set. Again, not one of the most athletic players at the position in the league, but incredibly intelligent. Does a great job playing deep. Wouldn't necessarily want to play the centre fielder role, because I worry about his ability to get sideline to sideline like an Earl Thomas. But in a cover 2-esque type scheme, I think he can be very dynamic, can make plays in both phases of the game, run and pass, gets everyone organised, has no real holes to his game. He's a very solid tackler, can be used to blitz if needed, and he's got, I think, some of the better coverage skills at the position in the league at this point in time. I think his experience was incredibly helpful to the Ravens last year in the secondary. I expect them to be very good in the secondary this year. Coming up 5th on the list, and could easily have been higher based on last season, another legit defensive MVP candidate, the New York Giants, Landon Collins. I mean, what a difference a year makes, apparently. really struggled in his rookie season. Something clicks last year. There's no doubt about that. He was around the ball every single game, putting up ridiculous numbers. Improved in pass coverage exponentially. Went from being a liability to an asset. Was making turnovers, big plays, always around the ball. Clearly, his understanding of the game has improved enormously. Just to be able to go from a below average safety to one of the best in the league in the course of a year. It can happen with a young player. Sometimes the growth is incredibly quick. But last year he was fantastic. We know he's a thumper and he can hit people. People were worried about his quickness coming out of college. We didn't see it last year. He made up for it with his ability to read the game, his positioning was absolutely fantastic. Last year he just looked like a superstar at the position. Did everything you could want to see from a safety. So he could certainly end up being higher on this list if he can maintain that standard performance. Just biding my time a little bit on him before putting him above some of the more proven guys on this list. Coming in fourth, I do tend to favour free safeties, as you'll probably notice. So coming in fourth, the highest strong safety on my list, and I suppose the face of the strong safety position in the NFL, Cam Chancellor of the Seahawks. What is there to say about this guy? He is the definition of a thumper, I suppose. He's the John Lynch-esque player of this generation. He absolutely punishes people. Great against the run, of course. Size really helps there. He's a far more fluid athlete, I think, than people probably ever thought coming out of college. That kind of size you don't often see it at that position. But maybe not the rangiest guy, but a lot quicker than people probably ever give him credit for. There's, again, ball hawking skills. All these guys near the top of the list. If the ball is there to be caught, they can go get it. Does a really good job defending tight ends. I think the Seahawks do a great job using him. Cover 3 scheme is absolutely perfect for him, where he can be functioning in the box and disguise some of what he's doing, allow him to be around the ball a bit more. He's got, the player coming up next in the list behind him to make up a lot of ground that, in a lot of schemes a strong safety will be responsible for. He's going to get you turnovers, leadership. I think him and Bobby Wagner are the leaders of this defence. When I see them, they do not look like the same team without him. He brings that attitude and the edge. And, the nickname Legion of Boom, really, it stems from his hitting ability at the end of the day. Great player. No doubt he's going to continue punishing players that dare roam across the middle of the Seattle defence. So, as I hinted, coming in at number 3 is Earl Thomas, is the Seahawks' other safety. For me, the most, I suppose, the closest thing I've seen to an Ed Reed-esque player. I'm not saying he's on that level. Ed Reed is the best I've seen at this job. The centre fielder, the back of the defence. He is essential to what the Seahawks do. Very hard to replace that kind of range and ability that he's got. Again, this is a really good tackler. Most of that Seahawks team is. They do not miss too many at the back end in particular. Devastating range. You can undercut routes. He's great ball hawking ability. Always around the ball. Incredible speed and quickness. Dangerous once he's got the ball in his hands. Again, plays the run very well. Especially for he's not the biggest guy, but he will hit people. I think he's the best deep fielder in the league right now. I think if anything, in terms of what this team does in coverage, he is the key cog in this defence. He has enabled them to do what they've done for the last number of years. Again, they don't look the same without him, and I think that's going to be true of most teams when they lose one of the absolute top players at a position. Don't think last season, even before the injury, I don't think it was his best, but his career resume speaks for itself. He has been a stellar player since entering the league. Coming in at number 2, another player I think has just flown under the radar throughout his career, but he's been pretty darn exceptional from day one, and that is the Minnesota Vikings' Harrison Smith. Again, last year, very, very productive season. the decline, and this is one of the reasons I'm so high, the decline when he missed, I think he missed 3 or 4 games, was noticeable. So it's clear to me this is a guy responsible for a lot of the organisation on the defensive side of the field, and he does not make mistakes from his end. May miss a tackle here and there, but in terms of being where he should be, this is a guy that can be relied upon. Fantastic in coverage. I think that's the strength of his game. Brilliant in zone in particular. You can see his knowledge of the game. Makes breaks incredibly quickly. Fantastic reading quarterback's eyes and getting himself into the right spots. I am, as I say, a huge fan of his. I think he's been perennially underrated. There's a lot of fans that aren't necessarily sure who he is. I think that's wrong, frankly. He should be lauded amongst the best players at his position in the league. Once again, as I say, stellar last year. He missed some games and came very high in my top 100. I think he was that good. Coming in number 1, you've probably guessed by now, Kansas City's Eric Berry. What a season he had last year. I mean, making plays in every respect. The Atlanta game, of course, will probably be on his highlight reel forever. That's as close as a safety can come to single-handedly winning a team a game. Absolutely fantastic performance there. He's always been a good tackler, a very rangy player. His physical skill set's fantastic for the position. You can play him at strong, you can play him at free. He'll do an exceptional job in both regards. Great ball skills, was forcing fumbles last year. This, I think, is just almost the perfect safety in terms of skill set. Some of the other guys in this list more specialised, as I say. Earl Thomas, you wouldn't want him lining up as a traditional in-the-box safety, whereas with Berry, I really do feel like he can do all of that for you. He's probably even good enough in coverage. You could play him at corner and he'd do a great job. Last year was easily the highlight of his career as a season, and for me, he just edged out Landon Collins to the best safety in the league last year. Again, Harrison Smith would have been competing for that spot if he'd stayed healthy through all 16 games, but I think those 3 were the class of the league last year. They were all absolutely stellar. So, yeah, Berry comes in with the top spot. Based on last season's tape, he's the best player in the league at the position. As I say, versatility and game-breaking impact that he had. Awesome stuff. So, there you have it. That's my top 10 list, and that's the end of this episode. As of next week, we're rebranding the channel a little bit. I'm sure you'll notice some changes to the aesthetic, and if you've ever checked out the Patreon, there'll be massive changes there. Now I've got a better idea as to what I'm doing and what my future plans are for the channel. So yeah, hope you enjoy those changes. I'm going to be a lot more active on social media, which is a massive weakness of mine. Never really got into the whole Twitter thing, and also the Facebook page. That's going to be a lot more discussion and stuff on there. So really hoping to engage with the audience, try and get the channel promoted a bit more, try and reach a few more people. I'm going to be starting my season previews next week, so I hope you'll enjoy those. They're going to be pretty detailed. I'll be covering one team Monday through Thursday, and then Friday will be the weekly reviews as per. That's the plan for now. So yeah, check that out. As always, if you want to discuss anything with me, got the Facebook page, we're Undercover Zero. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy, or just mention it below in the Facebook comments. Be more than happy to discuss football. My phone's going off, so I'll just have to quick say thanks very much for watching. If you can check out the Patreon, all that good stuff, it would be greatly appreciated. Have a great evening, and go Bucks.